Have you ever met someone who walked into your orbit for what felt like a heartbeat and somehow rearranged the furniture of your soul? No dramatic confessions, no Hollywood fireworks. Maybe it was a coworker on a 3-day training trip, or the stranger you sat beside on that long-delayed flight from Denver to Atlanta. You barely exchanged business cards, yet months later, their name still echoes in your thoughts whenever life grows quiet. If you're nodding right now, you felt the quiet jolt we're unpacking today. The awakening presence, that rare kind of encounter that doesn't break your heart, but breaks open a sleeping part of you. Cut to host, seated casually, palms open as if inviting conversation. I want you to imagine your inner world as an ancient fortress. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel. It's a place no market crash, no heartbreak, not even the daily doom scroll can breach. Most of us never wander past the outer walls of that citadel. We're too busy answering Slack pings or rushing the kids to soccer practice. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, someone shows up, doesn't even knock, really, and suddenly, a hidden gate swings wide. They don't gift you wisdom wrapped in a TED Talk bow. They simply exist in front of you with such unfiltered authenticity that an old truth inside you rises like a lantern in a dark hall. Think back. Who was that person for you? A high school art teacher who looked at your sketchbook and said, "Keep drawing. The world needs your lines." Maybe it was the quiet hospice nurse who held your dad's hand long after visiting hours, ended a silent reminder that tenderness is stronger than fear. Their words weren't flowery, their presence was the lesson. They stirred something buried so deep you'd forgotten it was there. Your courage to create, your capacity to love without armor, your longing for a life that feels like yours. Graphic overlay. Presence, performance, appears, then fades. Here's the paradox. We live in an age obsessed with performance Instagram reels, LinkedIn milestones, Apple Watch sleep scores. Yet the moments that rewire us almost never look impressive on a resume. They feel more like a whisper than a shout, a gentle swivel of perspective that makes the ordinary suddenly luminous. The Stoics would say that the spark was yours all along. The other person merely polished the mirror. Once you glimpse that reflection, your untouchable inner core, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to autopilot without sensing the dull ache of compromise. Let me ground this with a quick story. A friend of mine, Jenna, spent a decade climbing the corporate ladder at a tech giant. Corner office on the 43rd floor, espresso machine that cost more than my first car check. Then one afternoon, she bumped into an elderly janitor, humming Fleetwood Mac in the hallway. They chatted for 3 minutes. He said, "Funny thing about floors, every broomstroke is a chance to start fresh." Harmless cliche, right? But to Jenna, who'd been kidding herself that success equals status, it was a lightning bolt. She later told me, "That conversation shattered my story of why I mattered." Within a year, she pivoted to teaching coding to underserved kids. Same skill set, totally different script. That janitor didn't give her a 5-year plan. He simply radiated a truth she already carried, but had filed under someday. His presence cracked open the Citadel gate. Cut to a slow zoom on host's face. Softer lighting. So here's my invitation. Pause the video, yes. Literally hit stop for 10 seconds and ask, which parts of me feel asleep? Is it your curiosity to learn Italian guitar ballads? Your faith in second chances? Your willingness to forgive your younger self for mistakes that still tweet at 3 a.m.? Whatever naps inside you is waiting for a presence, maybe even this very conversation to jolt it awake. That's not sentimental fluff. It's neuroscience. Mirror neuron studies show we don't just mimic smiles, we mirror states of being. Sit with a person anchored in purpose, and your brain starts tuning to the same frequency, nudging you toward your own alignment. Sunrise time-lapse over a city skyline? Now, you might be wondering, great, but how do I hold on to that awakening once the person has left the room? Classic Stoic move. Turn the spotlight inward. Journal the exact moment you felt the spark capture, the sensory details, the sidewalk gum pattern, the cinnamon in your latte. Because memory fades, but written witness keeps the lantern lit. Next, build a deliberate ritual around that truth. If someone woke your love for nature, schedule a 10-minute park walk between Zoom meetings. If they ignited your resolve to speak honestly, practice one courageous sentence before bed. Today, I will not shrink. Repetition is the mortar that fortifies the citadel walls. Host leans in, voice soft but emphatic. I'll leave you with one final thought. The world doesn't actually need more noisy gurus. It needs more present humans. You could be the quiet catalyst for somebody tomorrow, the barista who remembers a name, the neighbor who listens without scrolling, the teammate who says, I believe your idea deserves the boardroom floor. Your ordinary presence might awaken a sleeping giant in someone else, just as theirs did in you. And that reciprocal awakening, friend, is how we gradually build a culture where depth outshines distraction. So, if this reflection stirred something in you, if it nudged a forgotten hope, or reminded you of a doorway back to yourself, take a breath and step through. And hey, if you'd like more conversations that trade surface hype for soul fuel, stick around, tap subscribe, join this community of explorers, and let's keep polishing the mirrors together. Because somewhere inside your inner citadel, a brighter version of you is already awake and waiting. Let's not leave them standing at the gate. Host leans forward, relaxed smile. Let me ask you something that might feel almost too simple. Have you ever met a person, shared barely an hour together, and yet they've stayed with you longer than people you've known for years? If your head just tilted in that universal yes gesture, you've already tasted today's theme. Real connection, soul-level connection, doesn't measure itself by minutes or selfies. It lives beneath the skin, where words feel clumsy and time zones don't apply. Cutaway. Slow motion montage of strangers passing on a busy street, one pair of eyes briefly locking. Think about it. We scroll past thousands of faces a month, swipe left or right on profiles like we're skipping ads. Yet, every so often, one encounter slips past your filters and lands deep. No fireworks, no violins, just a subtle click. The feeling of, oh, there you are. Plato called this phenomenon sympathia, the meeting of companion souls split long before recorded history. And sure, that sounds mystical, but neuroscience gives it practical legs. We're wired for recognition. Mirror neurons fire when we spot something in another that mirrors our unspoken self. At 3 a.m.? Whatever naps inside you is waiting for a presence. Maybe even this very conversation to jolt it awake. That's not sentimental fluff. It's neuroscience. Mirror neuron studies show we don't just mimic smile-sway mirror states of being. Sit with a person anchored in purpose, and your brain starts tuning to the same frequency, nudging you toward your own alignment. Sunrise time-lapse over a city skyline? Now, you might be wondering, great, but how do I hold on to that awakening once the person has left the room? Classic Stoic move. Turn the spotlight inward. Journal the exact moment you felt the spark capture, the sensory details, the sidewalk gum pattern, the cinnamon in your latte, because memory fades, but written witness keeps the lantern lit. Next, build a deliberate ritual around that truth. If someone woke your love for nature, schedule a 10-minute park walk between Zoom meetings. If they ignited your resolve to speak honestly, practice one courageous sentence before bed. Today, I will not shrink. Repetition is the mortar that fortifies the citadel walls. Host gestures with a coffee mug. Here's a personal example. I once shared a lift in Chicago with a violinist on her way to a late-night rehearsal. We talked 26 minutes. Yes, I timed it later about subway acoustics, the smell of pine rosin, and why some melodies feel like déjà vu. I haven't seen her since, but 2 years on, whenever life squeezes the color out of my day, I remember how her fingers danced mid-air when she described Vivaldi. What stayed wasn't her resume. It was how her presence awakened my own half-asleep love for music. Carl Jung would nod, knowingly. He spoke of the psyche as a vast reservoir. not just of repressed memories, but of truths we've never allowed into daylight. When someone's energy taps that reservoir, the water level rises in our well too. Suddenly you're humming again in the grocery aisle, doodling treble clefs in meeting notes. That's not romance. That's recognition. You didn't fall for them. You fell back into yourself. Depth, duration, pulses once, then fades. Modern culture sells us the opposite story. That intimacy is built on binge time, hundreds of texts, weekly date nights, shared playlists. Yet the relationships we remember decades later often sprang from a single conversation on a park bench or a shared umbrella in a thunderstorm. Duration adds chapters. Depth writes the title. And depth isn't loud. It's the hush between sentences that pause right before a genuine laugh. The eye contact that says, "I see you, and I've seen you before." Host, soft chuckle. Here's a brain teaser. If a tree falls in the forest and no one posts it on TikTok, did the moment matter? Plato would laugh. He'd say the forest echoed inside the soul of anyone tuned to that frequency. Likewise, a connection can shake your foundations even if no selfie commemorates it. You might forget the exact words, but the echo remains. It shows up in tiny life pivots. You sign up for improv class, you finally call your estranged brother, you start composting because that lift violinist mentioned the scent of soil after rain. Silent resonance travels farther than spoken promises. Cut to animated chalkboard illustration. Silhouette of a person, inner doors opening to light. Jung believed these moments integrate into our personal structure. Imagine a new beam added to the house of your identity, sturdy, invisible, holding up rooms you've never visited before. From the outside, nothing changed. Inside, the architecture is forever altered. That's why the memory lingers when logic insists it shouldn't. You're not pining for the person. You're calibrating to a new interior blueprint they quietly revealed. Host, voice lowers, inviting reflection. So, how do we honor these soul recognitions without turning them into unhealthy obsessions? First, name the quality that awakened in you. Was it boldness? Gentleness? A forgotten hunger to explore? Write it down. Give it texture. Second, act on that quality within 48 hours. Tiny steps: book a violin lesson, send the apology email, wander a botanical garden alone. Action grounds the abstract. It tells your unconscious, message received. Finally, let the other person go free. They're a catalyst, not a crutch. Gratitude doesn't require a leash. Dawn light spilling across a city skyline. If you've ever puzzled over why a brief encounter refuses to fade, remember, depth leaves fingerprints that time can't erase. It's not proof you're meant to chase someone across continents. It's proof you've just met another facet of yourself. And the real work, maybe even the real romance, is learning to live from that deeper layer every single day. Host smiles into camera, gentle sign off. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when this depth turns disruptive, when being truly seen shakes you hard enough to change your life's direction. But for now, I'd love to hear, who was your unexpected mirror? Drop their story in the comments, no names needed. Just the moment, the spark. Because when one of us shares a soul echo, we all learn the melody. Host steps into the light, calm but intent. There's a line from Socrates that still rattles the bones of philosophy students everywhere. The unexamined life is not worth living. In the real world, though, most of us treat self-examination the way we treat flossing gun. Admirable habit we'll get around to someday. Then, out of nowhere, someone appears and flips on a floodlight. They don't lecture. They don't hand you a worksheet. Their presence itself becomes a mirror, clean, unframed, unavoidable. And in that mirror, you glimpse a version of yourself you've been sidestepping for years. It's exhilarating. It's unsettling. Most of all, it's catalytic. Cutaway. Fast montage of mirrors. Antique, funhouse, dusty bathroom glass. Each reflects the camera lens for a single breath. Think back to the last time a casual conversation left you wide awake at 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling, replaying a single sentence because it was clever, but because it rang true. That's the disruptive mirror in action. It doesn't teach, it reveals. And revelation always comes with friction. Suddenly, the stories you've rehearsed about who you are and what you want feel a size too small. Like a suit that no longer fits, they tug at the shoulders of your peace. Host sits on a simple wooden stool, elbows on knees. Let me ground this with a short story. Years ago, I hosted a meetup for creative freelancers. Among the usual coffee-fueled chatter, a soft-spoken designer named Anna asked me a question I hadn't prepped for. When was the last time you made something just for wonder, not for likes? A dozen people kept talking, but everything in me fell silent. I realized I'd spent 18 months chasing algorithm approval and 0 minutes chasing wonder. Anna didn't scold me, she simply held up the mirror. The friction wasn't between us, it was inside me, where the truth rubbed against my comfort zone. Within a week, I blocked off Friday mornings for useless art. That tiny movement has since redirected my entire creative compass. Friction, motion, animates like chalk on a blackboard. Here's the paradox. We crave mentors, yet the moments that truly launch us forward feel like interruptions, not lessons. Presence trumps performance. You've probably met charismatic speakers who wow a crowd and vanish from memory by the parking lot. Meanwhile, the quiet coworker who listens without scrolling might haunt your thoughts for years because their authenticity strikes the deepest chord. It's less boombox, more tuning fork subtle vibrations you feel in your ribs, not your ears. Host, camera tightens, voice softens. So why does authenticity cut deeper than any polished pep talk? Carl Jung would say it taps the unconscious reservoir, that hidden aquifer of fears, talents, and forgotten longings we carry beneath conscious thought. When someone stands before you with nothing but honest presence, they act like a well digger. Without lifting a shovel, they expose water you didn't know existed. The surface stays still, but underground currents start to shift. That shift demands motion. Maybe a career pivot, maybe a late-night apology, maybe the courage to sign up for therapy. The mirror disrupts, and disruption calls for movement. Slow motion jogger at dawn, pushing off the pavement into stride. Now, friction isn't exactly comfortable. Your ego will bargain, ignore that question. They barely know you. But authenticity speaks in a frequency lower than logic. You feel it. And feelings, if you let them, become fuel. Here's a practical exercise. Next time someone's comment lingers, resist the urge to rationalize it away. Instead, journal 3 honest responses. 1. What part of me felt seen? 2. What resistance showed up first? 3. What tiny action would honor this insight within 24 hours? No 10-point plan required just 1 degree of movement. 1. Degrees compound. Host stands, paces slowly. I've noticed a pattern with clients and friends. The bigger the inner jolt, the quieter the outward revelation. It's rarely a stadium moment. It's your toddler asking why you never paint anymore, or a near stranger complimenting the calm in your voice. These micro mirrors bypass your practiced defenses, and because they arrive unannounced, they leave you no place to hide but forward. Maybe you're feeling that tug right now. If so, pause this video, yes, again, and ask, where is life inviting me to move? Don't wait for a 5-year vision. Look for the next courageous inch. Movement, even shaky movement, polishes the mirror until your reflection becomes instruction. You stop needing external disruptors because you've learned to disrupt yourself with honesty. Cut to host. Spotlight widens. Stage lights up to reveal an open doorway behind. Socrates believed that an examined life isn't a one-time audit. It's a continuous act of opening doors. Authentic presence throws that first door wide, but walking through, that's on us. So, here's my challenge. Identify the Anna in your life, the person whose simple question won't let you sleep. Send them a thank you text. No? Seriously? Then act. Even if it's awkward. Especially if it's awkward. Because the energy that shook you awake will only settle when it becomes motion. Host smiles, gestures toward doorway. In our next segment, we'll explore what happens after the first step, how silent resonance becomes long-term transformation. But before we get there, I'd love to hear what mirror moment changed your trajectory. Drop it in the comments below. Your story might be someone else's floodlight. And if this episode sparked movement in you, consider subscribing. Together, we're building a community where depth outshines distraction and authenticity outruns applause. Host leans back, contemplative smile. Have you ever really tried to forget a moment that cracked you open? Maybe it was a single conversation on a park bench, or the way someone looked straight through your rehearsed grin and saw the fatigue beneath. You tell yourself, it was nothing, move on. Yet days, weeks, years later, the memory pops up uninvited, like a song that won't leave your head. Carl Jung predicted this exact tug of war. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. We drown truth in podcasts, inbox pings, or an extra pour of wine. But here's the twist. When a presence really connects, avoidance stops working. The deeper note keeps vibrating, even under all that noise. Cutaway. Slow motion of someone scrolling on a phone, thumb hesitating before locking the screen. Think about the last time you binged a show you barely liked, just to hush an uneasy feeling. It worked until the final credits rolled, then the hush was gone, and the feeling was louder. That's resonance. It doesn't report to logic or distance. It reports to meaning. You can move across the country, block the number, unfollow the feed, yet the echo remains, because the origin isn't outside, it's inside, buried somewhere older than your first memory. Plato would nod here. He claimed the soul doesn't learn truth. It remembers it like seeing the outline of a mountain range you half recognized from a dream. When someone's authenticity touches that ancient memory, the effect is permanent. Once awakened, the soul refuses to roll over and go back to sleep. You can negotiate with schedules and budgets, but you cannot outlogic a sleeping giant that's now wide awake. Host picks up a smooth river stone, turns it in hand. Let me offer a small story. A friend of mine, Mike, spent 20 years building a tidy life corner office, 2-car garage, color-coordinated vacation photos. Then he meets a retired wilderness guide at a fundraiser. They talk for 15 minutes about glaciers melting faster than maps can keep up. The guide's eyes carry that clear, field-tested honesty you can't manufacture. Mike drives home buzzing. A week later, he's pricing backpacks instead of SUVs. 6 months later, he leaves the office job to work for a conservation nonprofit. No grand sermon, no life coach, just a presence that refused to be ignored because it mirrored a dormant call in his own soul. Jung would say the wilderness guide slipped straight past Mike's ego and knocked on the basement door marked Unlived Life. The ego hollers, "Are you crazy? We have a 401 ka." The soul whispers, "But remember the boy who collected river rocks?" Once that door swings open, every attempt to slam it shut only highlights the gap. Silhouette of a bell rung once, the sound waves keep widening. Here's the science behind the poetry. Neurologists talk about emotional tagging, where a vivid experience links to a surge of dopamine and norepinephrine, branding the moment as important. But tagging alone doesn't explain why some memories fade while others deepen. That's where meaning steps in. If the experience resonates with a core value or unlived potential, your brain files it under Keep Revisiting. Each revisit strengthens neural wiring the way walking the same forest path carves a trail. Meaning, plus memory equals permanence. So when you wonder, why can't I shake that 5-minute chat? Remember, it isn't just the chat, it's the door it pointed to. Closing the door means turning your back on your own blueprint, and your psyche is wired for wholeness, not comfort. Host leans forward, a note of challenge. Now, let's turn the lens on us. Where are we still sprinting on Jung's hamster wheel of avoidance? Maybe it's the half-written novel that calls at 2 a.m., or the apology you rehearsed, but never sent. The presence that sparked it might be long gone, yet the vibration persists. Good news. You don't need that person back to keep evolving. The resonance is yours, now an internal compass that won't let you settle for smaller stories. Try this exercise tonight. 1. Name the echo. Write down the memory that won't leave. What exact line, gesture, or moment keeps pinging you? 2. Trace the meaning. Ask, what value or longing does this awaken? Maybe it's freedom, creativity, service, or simply rest. 3. Design a tiny ritual. One action, under 10 minutes, that honors that value. Paint one messy brushstroke. Read one article on marine ecology. Call one sibling you've drifted from. Sounds almost trivial, right? But remember Plato, the soul knows the path. It just needs a breadcrumb to keep walking. Ritual is the breadcrumb that leads resonance into reality. Sunrise over a still lake. Ripples spreading from a single dropped pebble. A quick caution. Living from resonance doesn't guarantee applause. Friends might say, "You've changed." That's the point. The ripple you feel is invisible to anyone still living at the surface. Your job isn't to convince them. It's to stay true to the deeper current. Because every time you honor that current, you become the kind of presence that might awaken someone else. The cycle continues. Memory, meaning, resonance, awakening. Jung hinted at this domino effect. He said when one person integrates a piece of their shadow, the collective unconscious shifts, even if only by a hair's breadth. So yes, your choice to answer the echo matters beyond your own storyline. It adds one more drop of authenticity to a very thirsty world. Host smiles gently, sets the stone down. I'll leave you with a question to carry into the week. What truth is my soul determined to remember, no matter how busy I get? Write it on a sticky note. Set it as your phone wallpaper. Whisper it on your commute. Let the resonance do its work. And if this conversation nudged an echo you'd like to explore, share it in the comments. You never know whose soul memory your words might stir. In our next segment, we'll navigate how to live sustainably with this new awareness. No dramatic quitting required, just steady alignment. Until then, stay curious, stay present, and remember, once the bell has rung inside you, silence is never truly silent again. Host stands in front of a large blank canvas, holding a piece of charcoal. Picture this. You meet someone, share a cup of coffee, and then weeks later, you're dreaming of tide-marked notebooks floating down a river. You wake up thinking, why notebooks? Here's the twist. The person, the coffee, the casual laugh about water-damaged journals, somehow, it's all morphed into a symbol your unconscious refuses to file away. Carl Jung warned us. What you resist, not only persists, it grows. A simple presence can balloon into a personal myth, quietly steering the plot of your life. Cutaway. Close-up of a journal page. A hand sketches a tiny boat drifting across lines of text. We tend to trust spreadsheets, progress bars, smartwatch rings. Yet the heavy lifting of growth happens off-screen, in a language closer to poetry than to PowerPoint. Dreams, metaphors, recurring images, these are the emojis of the soul. They bypass logic and speak straight to instinct. Resist them, and they pop up louder. New dreams, uncanny déjà vu, random song lyrics that nail your mood better than any therapist. Host draws a small spiral on the blank canvas. Let me give you a real-world example. A coaching client, Sam, kept dreaming of a lighthouse crumbling into the sea. Turns out, the dream began 2 months after he'd met a coworker who radiated unshakable calm in crisis, the human version of a lighthouse. Sam admired her, but felt strangely angry at himself every time she walked into a meeting. That anger? Classic resistance. His psyche was spotlighting an unlived truth. He too craved steadiness, but feared he'd fail if he tried to embody it. The lighthouse symbol wouldn't leave him alone until he faced the gap. We spent 3 sessions mapping that image forward. What does a lighthouse do? It stands, it glows, it guides. Sam began a 2-minute grounding routine before calls feet on floor. Slow breath, short mantra, I can stand and glow. 6 months later, he became the go-to crisis lead in his department of extra certification, just alignment with a symbol that had been shouting for a job. Graphic overlay. Spiral morphs into an expanding ripple animation, tiny wave becomes wide circle. Here's why resistance backfires. The unconscious doesn't lecture, it repeats. The more you ignore a symbol, the louder it rings, looping through fresh disguises until you finally look. Jung called this amplification dreams, stacking on dreams, coincidences stacking on coincidences, each layer turning up the volume. Ever notice how after you suppress a thought all week, you binge TikTok and bam, 3 videos in a row echo that same thought? Coincidence fuels resonance. Resonance feeds growth. Host walks to a second canvas showing a half-blurred face. Conversation nudged an echo you'd like to explore. Share it in the comments. You never know whose soul memory your words might stir. In our next segment, we'll navigate how to live sustainably with this new awareness of no dramatic quitting required. Just steady alignment. Until then, stay curious, stay present, and remember, once the bell has rung inside you, silence is never truly silent again. Host stands in front of a large blank canvas, holding a piece of charcoal. Picture this. You meet someone, share a cup of coffee, and then weeks later, you're dreaming of tide-marked notebooks floating down a river. You wake up thinking, why notebooks? Here's the twist. The person, the coffee, the casual laugh about water-damaged journals. Somehow it's all morphed into a symbol your unconscious refuses to file away. Carl Jung warned us, what you resist, not only persist, it grows. A simple presence can balloon into a personal myth, quietly steering the plot of your life. Let's zoom out. Plato believed the soul remembers truth, the way an acorn remembers oak. A potent presence. Maybe a mentor, maybe a fleeting stranger drops sunlight on that acorn. The seed doesn't ask permission, it germinates. From the outside, you're still paying bills, folding laundry. Inside, roots are punching through old concrete. The new growth writes itself as a symbol, because symbols store energy more efficiently than explanations. Ask a veteran painter why she returns to one odd color for decades, or a songwriter why the same 3 chords haunt every album. Chances are, they'll shrug. It just feels right. That right is mythic shorthand for an inner blueprint uncovering itself, one brushstroke or chorus at a time. Roll. Nighttime cityscape. Neon lotus projected on a building facade. You might wonder, how do I know which symbol is guidance and which is random brain static? Simple test. Does it carry felt weight? A true symbol leaves an aftertaste. No scroll can scrub away. It's the lotus on a stranger's t-shirt that reappears 3 nights running in your dreams. The phrase, build a bridge, echoing whenever you drive over water. The lighthouse tilting in Sam's REM theater. If it keeps knocking, open the door. Here's a quick exercise to translate symbol into action. 1. Capture. Within 5 minutes of noticing the image or phrase, jot it down. Phone note, napkin, whatever. 2. Contextualize. Ask, where did I meet this symbol in waking life? Link it to the moment or person that triggered it. 3. Converse. Write a brief letter as if the symbol could answer. Dear Lighthouse, what do you need me to see? Suspend judgment. Let words flow. 4. Commit. Choose a micro behavior that honors the message. A ritual, a conversation, a boundary, a risk. Keep it tiny but tangible. Action completes the circuit, otherwise the energy just keeps ricocheting inside you, growing, as Jung warned, in size and intensity. Host turns canvas to reveal a bold charcoal lotus, open and bright. Let me share one more personal anecdote. During a stressful season, I kept seeing a rusty key in daydreams. Whole afternoons, the image floated behind my laptop screen. I finally sketched it, stuck it on my fridge and asked, "Unlock what?" 2 days later, my sister called, inviting me on a silent retreat I felt too busy to attend. That key flashed in my head like a GIF. I went, spent 3 days without Wi-Fi, and realized silence was the door I'd padlocked with deadlines. Since then, I schedule key hours every week, phone off, journal open. Guess what? My productivity surged because the symbol got its job. Unlock rest, unlock depth, unlock me. Symbol, story, self, fades in. Why does any of this matter for personal growth? Because confronting a symbol is the most time-efficient way to meet your shadow, the parts you've exiled, to keep life tidy. Shadow work isn't a buzzword, it's emotional recycling. What's unlived in you doesn't evaporate. It composts underground, waiting to fertilize your next chapter. Refusing the symbol means refusing the nutrients. Accepting it means integrating power you already own. And integration isn't a one-and-done fireworks show. It's Wednesday morning at 7:05 a.m., choosing yogurt over doom scroll, because the lotus reminds you growth favors nourishment. It's Friday at 4:59 p.m., closing the laptop on time, because the lighthouse insists steady light needs steady fuel. Symbols are personal myth tech. Intuitive GPS that never loses signal unless we mute it. Host steps back. Canvases now form a mini gallery behind. As we close, take 30 seconds, yes, right now, to scan your memory for a stubborn image or phrase that keeps resurfacing. Don't critique it, just notice. What might it be asking of you? Drop your discovery in the comments. Your single line could be the spark someone else needs to decode their own symbol. In our next episode, we'll look at how to weave these symbols into daily habits without turning life into a mystical scavenger hunt. Until then, remember, the story you're living began as a symbol you once ignored or embraced. Choose wisely which myths you let grow. Host, soft smile, hands loosely in pockets. So here we are, standing at the edge of everything we've unpacked together. We've talked about sudden mirrors, lingering symbols, and the mysterious way a single presence can flip the lights on in rooms we didn't even know existed. If your mind feels a little rearranged right now, good. That's exactly where authentic self-discovery begins. Not with someone filling your emptiness, but with someone exposing it and saying, "Look, this space is yours to explore." Aristotle nailed it over 2,000 years ago. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But he also added a phrase that gets quoted far less. The energy of the mind is the essence of life. Translation? Insight without motion is just philosophical wallpaper. The moment awareness dawns, a current starts humming in your chest asking, "Okay, what will you do with this?" Roll of sunrise hitting a city skyline, office lights blinking on floor by floor. Maybe the person who woke something in you is long gone, moved across the map, ghosted your texts, or simply drifted out of orbit. That's okay. Whether the connection lasts a decade or a day, the interior shift is permanent. You can't unlearn the taste of realness once it hits the tongue. The only choice now is whether you'll honor that taste or smother it with the familiar flavors of busyness and default settings. I learned this the messy way. A few years back, a mentor invited me to a silent meditation retreat. 72 hours, no phone, no talking, just me, my thoughts, and an aggressive chorus of crickets at 3 a.m. Around hour 27, I realized I'd built an entire identity on being available inbox zero, quick replies, round-the-clock notifications. Silence exposed a canyon of unasked questions. Who am I when no one needs me? What do I need from myself? When the retreat ended, I didn't gain a new role. I gained an empty room in my psyche and the freedom to furnish it intentionally. Host steps through doorway onto a small balcony, sunrise light washes over. That's the invitation presence extends. It points to the void, not to shame us, but to hand us blueprints for expansion. Picture a house inspector saying, "Hey, there's unused space beneath these floorboards. Want to build a wine cellar?" Or better, a creative studio, a meditation nook, a dance floor, whatever makes your spirit exhale. Awareness isn't a condemnation. It's the grand opening of unexplored square footage in your life. So, how do we keep the momentum? Let's ground this in 3 practical mov simple, not easy. 1. Name the new landscape. Write a 1-sentence description of the void you've noticed. Maybe it's creative risk, emotional honesty, or simply rest. Put that sentence where you'll trip over it: daily phone lock screen, bathroom mirror, fridge. 2. Fuel the mind, move the body. Aristotle's energy of the mind thrives on action. Pair every insight with a micro-practice. 10 minutes of guitar, strumming for creativity. A weekly phone-free walk for presence. A single brave conversation for honesty. Small is sustainable. Sustainable rewires identity. 3. Honor the catalyst without idolizing it. Send a thank you note if possible, but remember, they were the key, not the destination. Your growth journey is now self-powered. Keep steering. Insight, ritual, integration appears, arrows animate between words. Let's zoom out one last time. Connections like these don't come to stay. They come to awaken. In hero myths, the guide, the Gandalf, the Morpheus, the Yoda shows up, drops one mind-bending lesson, and disappears, so the hero must walk the path alone. Real life is no different. The presence that shook you awake might never re-enter your storyline, but the spark they struck, that ember, is yours to breathe into flame. And here's the quiet miracle. As you stoke that flame, you become a living presence for someone else. Not by preaching, but simply by existing with your newfound authenticity. The colleague who notices you clock out on time to attend pottery class might remember their own abandoned easel. The friend who watches you order seltzer instead of one more beer might feel permission to examine their coping habits. Transformation is contagious in the best possible way. Host leans on balcony rail, camera slowly dollies in. Before we part, I want to leave you with a reflective challenge. Tonight, set a 3-minute timer, close your eyes, and ask, what part of me feels most alive right now, and what single action would amplify that aliveness tomorrow? Don't overthink it. Trust the first nudge. That nudge is wisdom wearing sneakers, ready to run. Remember, once an awakening happens, nothing inside stays unchanged. You can ignore it, mute it, rationalize it, but the tectonic plates have shifted. A new continent of possibility has risen inside you. Plant a flag, explore its coasts, map its mountains. And if you ever feel lost, rewind this video or revisit your catalyst moment. The breadcrumbs are there, glowing under moonlight. Thank you for sharing this journey from the first flicker of recognition to the wide-open sky of self-realization. If this conversation sparked something real, drop a comment below about the action you're taking, big or small. Your step could illuminate someone else's path. And if you're hungry for more dialogue that trades quick fixes for deep shifts, hit subscribe and join our community. Because wisdom isn't a solo sport, it's a relay. Someone handed the torch to you. Now you carry it forward, lighting the next stretch of road.